My name is Kevin, and before all of this happened, I thought Sabrina and I had a pretty normal marriage. You know, the kind where nobody's perfect, but you somehow make it work anyway. We argued sometimes. Every married couple does. Usually our fights came down to one simple fact. I'm a boring, practical guy. I believe in paying bills on time, keeping an emergency fund, and asking crazy questions like, do we really need this? Sabrina, on the other hand, believes life is too short to deny yourself happiness. And apparently, happiness often arrived in the form of expensive gadgets, random online courses, decorative pillows with motivational quotes, and things that would eventually end up in a closet after 2 weeks. Honestly, if enthusiasm could be used as currency, my wife would have been richer than Jeff Bezos. A few days before everything exploded, we got into another argument. She wanted to spend a ridiculous amount of money on something I considered completely unnecessary. I tried to explain that maybe, just maybe, we should prioritize things like our mortgage, retirement, and the crazy idea of keeping the lights on. She got quiet, which after 8 years of marriage, I had learned was far more dangerous than yelling. Then, 2 days later, Sabrina sat down across from me at the kitchen table and calmly said, "Every woman needs an escape plan. Now, gentlemen, there are certain sentences you don't expect to hear over Tuesday night leftovers." Naturally, I asked what the hell that was supposed to mean. That's when she informed me that she was opening a brand new bank account. A private account. Her account. Freedom Fund, she clarified. And she explained, with the confidence of someone announcing a new fitness routine, that every woman should have money set aside in case her marriage falls apart. You know, just to feel secure, just in case she ever needed to leave me. At first I thought she was joking. Unfortunately, Sabrina wasn't joking. And believe me, the bank account itself wasn't even the craziest part, because there were a lot of details surrounding this little escape plan that turned our marriage into something I barely recognized. And that's exactly what I'm about to tell you. So here's where this whole thing gets truly bizarre, because when Sabrina made her big announcement about the escape plan, I sat there for a second just trying to catch up. Like my brain was a computer trying to run software it wasn't designed for. My first thought was, okay, why does she even need a new account? Because here's the thing, Sabrina already had her own bank account. Had it the whole time we were married. Her own debit card, her own login, her own money sitting in there that I had never once touched. Not a dollar, not a cent. Not even during that one winter when work slowed down and I was quietly eating peanut butter sandwiches so the bills got paid on time. And she had her own job. A pretty comfortable one, honestly. No night shifts, no overtime, no coming home covered in drywall dust and questioning your life choices. Nice office, reasonable hours, decent paycheck. Could she have pushed harder career-wise and made more? Probably. But that was her call to make, not mine. Me? I work in construction, roofing specifically. I run my own crew. We travel across the state doing new builds, repairs, replacements, anything that involves getting on a roof and making sure rain stays outside where it belongs. Now, if you've never stood on a dark asphalt shingle roof in July at 2 in the afternoon, let me paint you a picture. It's hot enough that you start genuinely reconsidering your entire life plan. The sun is directly above you. The roof is reflecting heat back up at your face. And you're up there with tools, moving fast, because time is money and gravity doesn't care about your feelings. It's hard work. Real hard. But I love it. I built something with my own hands. A business, a crew, a reputation. And thank God it pays well. So our financial setup was always pretty simple. Most of my income went into the household. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, all of it. I also kept some aside for work expenses and a little personal spending money. And I always made sure to put a chunk into an emergency fund because I've seen enough go wrong in life to know that rainy days are real. And I built the family budget with room in it. Intentionally. If Sabrina wanted a manicure, a new haircut, a spa day, a new outfit, A random online course about something she'd forget about in 3 weeks. No problem. The money was there. I made sure of it. Her own paycheck. She spent it however she wanted, mostly on what I privately called emotional support purchases. You know the type. Decorative stuff, gadgets, things that seemed deeply important on a Thursday night and were in the back of a closet by Sunday. I didn't write her about it. Maybe once in a while I'd say something gentle like, "Hey, do we really need a fourth air fryer?" But I wasn't her accountant. She was a grown woman. So when she sat across from me at that kitchen table talking about financial independence, I genuinely didn't know what planet she was broadcasting from. She was financially independent. Had been the whole time. But then, and this is the part where I had to set down my fork, she explained how this new Freedom Fund was actually supposed to work. Turns out it wasn't just going to be funded by her money. Oh no. According to Sabrina, I was also supposed to be making regular contributions to this account. I want you to let that sink in for a moment. My wife, who I have supported, loved, and shared a home with for 8 years, was asking me to directly fund her escape route out of a marriage with me, the guy sitting right across the table from her. If you translate that from therapy speak into regular working man English, she was essentially proposing that I finance my own hypothetical divorce. I sat there for a second, and I'll be honest, part of me was genuinely impressed. Because pulling something like that off with a straight face, that's not regular confidence. That's Olympic-level nerve. That's a whole training regimen. That's years of preparation. I almost wanted to applaud. Almost. Naturally, the first thing out of my mouth was the obvious question. Sabrina, are you cheating on me? Her eyes went wide like I'd just accused her of robbing a bank. No. Okay. Then you fell out of love with me? You want a divorce? You already got a lawyer lined up? Because I'm genuinely trying to understand what's happening at this table right now. But she held her ground. She explained, very calmly, very patiently, like she was reading from a pamphlet, that women are vulnerable, that life is unpredictable, and that every woman deserves a backup plan in case her marriage one day falls apart. She said all of this in the same tone you'd use to describe a new pasta recipe. Soothing, reasonable, completely insane. Now, if I'm being honest, given my line of work, I could have been a much more suspicious husband. I'm gone with my crew for days at a time. Different towns, different job sites, sometimes back-to-back weeks. A less trusting man might have let that eat at him. But Sabrina had never given me real reason to worry. Her workplace was almost entirely women. Her free time was spent at home, dealing with the house, or having family over. Her relatives came around pretty often, and she made regular trips to visit her mom, who'd been dealing with some health issues. I also want to mention, and I'm not proud of how I found this out, the previous owners of our house had left a few cameras installed in some spots. Corners you wouldn't really notice unless you were looking. I knew about them. Not everyone did. I'm not saying I used them as a surveillance system, but I'm also not going to pretend the peace of mind wasn't there. Point is, this wasn't about another man. I knew exactly where this was really coming from. Money. More specifically, our ongoing disagreement about money. See, Sabrina has always had a thing for expensive stuff. Not just nice things. Things that look expensive. Things that let the world know you didn't shop clearance. Designer handbags. Premium cars. Whatever was trending that month before everyone forgot about it 30 days later. And every single time I played the villain. The guy asking the uncomfortable questions. Do we actually need that? Is there a version of this that doesn't cost as much? I wasn't trying to control her. I just genuinely could not understand spending top dollar on a brand name when there were perfectly good alternatives sitting right next to it for a fraction of the price. Same quality. Nobody could tell the difference. But apparently, that was missing the point entirely. Our last argument, the one that apparently lit the fuse on all of this, was about exactly that kind of purchase. Something expensive, something I thought was pointless, and a conversation that did not end well. So when the Freedom Fund appeared out of nowhere 2 days later, it didn't feel like a financial safety plan to me. It felt like emotional payback with a bank account attached, and that's when I made a decision. "All right," I said. "I'm in." Sabrina smiled. She smiled too fast. "Go ahead and open your account. I'm not stopping you, but there's one condition." The smile disappeared. "If you're seriously preparing for a life without me, if you're genuinely building an exit strategy, then I have to treat this like it's real, because that's what a responsible adult does." I held up one finger. "First, your Freedom Fund gets funded by your money, not mine. I'm not subsidizing a plan to replace me." Second finger. "Second, since we're now apparently operating on the assumption that you might be running this household solo someday, you should probably start getting some practice. Starting now, you'll be contributing to the family budget. 40%. I watched her face go through about 6 different emotions in 4 seconds. She had expected a fight. Yelling, maybe. Hurt feelings, definitely. Some kind of emotional blow-up she could point to later as proof that I was difficult. She did not expect a spreadsheet. "Kevin, you're taking this completely wrong. I'm not going anywhere. It's just in case. What if you leave me someday?" And I almost laughed. I really did. "Exactly, sweetheart. Life is unpredictable. That's kind of my whole point. So let's make sure you're ready, just in case." She started backpedaling then. Said she loved me. Said divorce was never on the table. Said I was being way too serious about a simple thing. But I had already made up my mind. I told her very calmly that for the next 2 months, she'd be contributing her share to the household. Not as punishment, not out of anger, but as preparation for the independent life she'd described so confidently over Tuesday night leftovers. Because here's the thing nobody puts on those motivational pillows. Freedom isn't a feeling. Freedom is a budget line item. And somehow, for the last 8 years, that particular line had been covered exclusively by the boring, practical guy she'd been planning to escape from. To say Sabrina was unhappy with the new arrangement would be like saying the Grand Canyon is a minor ditch. She was offended. She was angry. And most dangerous of all, she activated her signature character trait, stubbornness. Now, I want you to understand something about my wife. Sabrina is the kind of person who will drive full speed into a concrete wall rather than admit she took a wrong turn. It's almost impressive, like watching someone refuse to check the map on principle. So instead of quietly walking the whole thing back, she looked at my counteroffer and decided to treat it as a personal challenge. "Fine, Kevin. I'll show you exactly what I'm capable of." And honestly, the first couple weeks looked decent. She transferred her share into the household budget with full dramatic energy, opened the Freedom Fund account, even dropped a few pointed comments around the house, casual like, just loud enough for me to hear. "See? I'm perfectly capable of being independent." I didn't say anything. I had decided early on that I wasn't going to argue, wasn't going to comment, wasn't going to do anything except let the situation unfold at its own natural pace. Sometimes the best way to win an argument is to just get out of the way and let reality do the talking. And reality showed up right on schedule. Turns out Sabrina's paycheck had some opinions about this plan. She didn't quite hit 40% of the household budget, landed somewhere around 30, which honestly wasn't nothing. But that wasn't the main problem. The main problem was trying to do all 3 things at once. Contribute to the family expenses, build the Freedom Fund, and continue living the way she was used to living. Apparently, the universe didn't get the memo that she needed all 3 of those to work simultaneously. The spontaneous purchases disappeared first. There 1 week, gone the next. Then the new handbags stopped showing up. The clothes hauls slowed down. Then the salon appointments and spa treatments started getting pushed with the classic line, "I'll just go next month." But the real gut punch came when she had to actually sit down and count money for the first time. Truly count it, track it, watch where it went. And Sabrina, it turned out, hated counting money, hated budgeting, hated comparing prices, hated standing in a store doing mental math instead of just grabbing what she wanted, hated saying no to things she used to toss in the cart without a second thought. I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying it because it was genuinely painful to watch someone discover for the first time that groceries cost what they cost and electricity doesn't negotiate. But here's the part that really got me. In her head somehow, I was still the bad guy. Not the Freedom Fund idea, not the escape plan announcement, not 8 years of me covering the majority of everything while her paycheck went toward whatever caught her eye that week. Me, Kevin, the guy who had been quietly making sure the lights stayed on. I was the villain in this story. Now, I want to be clear. I did not build this situation to punish her, but I also wasn't going to pretend it wasn't happening. And Sabrina, being Sabrina, was not about to admit defeat, so she found a solution. A credit line. Small amounts at first, barely noticeable, then a little more the next month, then a little more after that. And I started noticing the signs before she ever said a word about it. Her mood got darker. She was on her phone constantly, staring at her banking app like it personally wronged her. She snapped at small things, got quiet in ways that weren't her usual quiet. But she kept the posture, kept acting like everything was under control, like the whole operation was running exactly as planned. Meanwhile, from where I was standing, it was pretty obvious the operation had taken the wheel, and she was just along for the ride. But admitting that meant admitting I was right. And in our marriage, that had always been the most expensive thing Sabrina could possibly purchase. But here's where I have to give my wife some genuine credit. Because whatever Sabrina's flaws are, lazy is not one of them. When that woman locks onto something, she doesn't let go. She might be driving straight toward a wall, but she's doing it with full commitment and both hands on the wheel. So instead of quietly dropping the whole thing, she started problem solving. First, she picked up extra shifts, started looking for side work. More hours, more hustle, just grinding it out the way you have to when the numbers don't add up and your pride won't let you admit it. Then something else happened. She looked around our house and apparently noticed, maybe for the first time, that we were living inside a storage unit with furniture. And that's when the Great Purge began. Suddenly, our local marketplace listings were flooded with her old purchases. Exercise equipment that had seen exactly 3 days of use before becoming an expensive coat rack. Gadgets still in the original packaging. Decorative items I had completely forgotten existed. Boxes of stuff I didn't even know we owned. At one point, I poked my head into the storage closet and made the mistake of joking, "Sabrina, keep this up and I might actually see the floor in here again." She didn't laugh. She listed 3 more things that same afternoon. And honestly, it worked. The house started breathing again. Rooms felt bigger. And money started showing up in her account from things she'd already spent money on once. Which, if you think about it, is a pretty efficient system if you ignore the part where you bought all of it in the first place. But the thing that really threw me, the thing I genuinely did not see coming, was what she started watching on her phone. Gone were the unboxing videos. Gone were the luxury haul reels and the things worth splurging on content she used to consume like it was a second job. Instead, my wife was watching videos about financial literacy, budgeting strategies, debt traps and how people fall into them, mindful spending, how credit lines work and why they're dangerous. I actually picked up her phone once just to make sure I had the right person's device. This was the woman who once bought a decorative lamp, not because we needed light, but because, and I quote, "it creates a vibe." That woman was now comparing unit prices on dish soap. I didn't say anything. I just quietly put her phone back down and stared at the wall for a moment. Slowly, steadily, she started paying down the credit line, working more, spending less, actually planning where the money went before it left her hands. Learning, in real time, what it costs to run a life. And by the end of those 2 months, I was looking at a different person. Tired, Genuinely worn out, with the kind of under-eye circles that come from actual effort, not just bad sleep, but different, more grounded, like someone who had walked through something and come out the other side changed by it. The moment I'll remember longest came on an ordinary weeknight. We were sitting in the kitchen, nothing special going on, and Sabrina put down what she was doing, looked at me, and said, "Kevin, I was wrong." I set my phone down. Because in 8 years of marriage, those 3 words in that order had been a pretty rare occurrence. I wanted to make sure I was fully present for it. She said she'd been living inside her own fantasy. That money was more dangerous than she'd realized. Not in some abstract way, but personally, specifically, her. That losing control of spending happened faster and quieter than she ever expected. She said she finally understood, in a way she hadn't before, how hard money actually is to earn, especially when you also happen to love spending it. And then she said something that I think took real courage. She said I'd been carrying more than she ever noticed, and that she'd been treating our stability like it was just background noise, something that was always going to be there, like the heat or the running water. I didn't say I told you so. I'm not going to pretend the thought didn't cross my mind, but I kept it there. Now here's the part that's almost funny. After everything, all the stubbornness, the credit line, the exhaustion, the sold exercise equipment, she had actually done it, paid down the debt, met her share of the household, cleaned out half the house. But the famous Freedom Fund? $0. Not 1 cent had made it in there. The escape plan had been fully evacuated before anyone ever moved in. Sabrina laughed when she realized it. Actually laughed, the real kind, not the polite kind. Looks like my escape plan died before it ever got started. Then she got quiet and serious and asked me to forgive her. Said she'd been operating on illusions for too long. Said she'd taken what we had for granted in ways she was only now starting to see clearly. But here's the ending I didn't expect. She didn't come out of it bitter or embarrassed or resentful. She came out of it energized. Not about the hardship. Nobody enjoys that part. But about the feeling on the other side of it. The feeling of having actually done something herself. Earned it, managed it, survived it. For the first time in a long time, Sabrina started talking about her career. Real conversations. About growing, about new opportunities, about what she was actually capable of if she took it seriously. And if I'm being completely honest, that's all I ever wanted. Not to win. Not to be right. Not to prove some point about budgets and responsibility. I just wanted my wife to meet real life face to face. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone isn't to protect them from hard things. It's to stop standing between them and the lesson they've needed for years. After everything settled down, I found myself wanting to do something nice for Sabrina. Not because I felt like a winner, not because I wanted to rub anything in. Honestly, I was proud of her. Yeah, she created the whole mess herself. And yeah, I want to be transparent here. When she first sat across that kitchen table and told me about her Freedom Fund, my first instinct was not calm, measured wisdom. My first instinct was to lose my mind completely. Yell. Make it a whole thing. But I didn't. And she didn't run from what came next. She didn't quit halfway through. Didn't point fingers. Didn't manufacture some story where she was the victim, and I was the reason everything went sideways. She walked straight through it and came out different on the other side. That deserves something. So after a while, I went out and bought her the thing. The exact item that had started one of our arguments. The expensive thing I'd called unnecessary. The one she'd wanted and I'd pushed back on. I wrapped it up and gave it to her. When Sabrina opened the box, her face did that thing I love. Pure, unfiltered happiness. She almost tackled me. 8 years of marriage and she still gets genuinely excited like that, which, for the record, is one of my favorite things about her. But then something happened that I was absolutely not prepared for. She stopped, looked at me, looked at the gift, and said, "Kevin, should you really have spent that much? I want you to understand, I nearly fell out of my chair. This was the woman whose previous justification for major purchases had been, and I quote, "But it's so pretty." The woman who once bought a throw pillow with a motivational quote on it that I'm pretty sure she never once read. That woman was now standing in our living room questioning the cost-to-value ratio of her own gift. I just sat there for a second and let it wash over me. It worked. It actually worked. And here's the thing that matters most. We came out of all of it stronger. Not despite the conflict, but kind of because of it. For the first time in a long time, we were looking in the same direction. Same priorities, same language, same page. About a year later, Sabrina had moved up noticeably at work. Not because I pushed her, because she pushed herself. She started seeking out training, taking on more responsibility, asking questions she hadn't bothered asking before. By the end of that year, she was seriously talking about starting her own small business. Her idea, her energy. I was just trying to keep up. And here's the detail that gets me every time I think about it. She became the one who'd pumped the brakes on spending. Her, Sabrina, the woman who once considered a decorative lamp a household necessity because of the vibe. Now she'd be the one saying, "Let's think about it first before we spend anything." I would just nod and pretend that was always how things worked around here. The Freedom Fund was officially closed. Sabrina herself admitted later that the whole idea had been an emotional reaction dressed up in financial language. A feeling that needed somewhere to go. But something else opened in its place. A joint fund. Ours. For big future purchases, for travel, for emergencies, for the general business of living an adult life with a plan behind it. And contributing 50% to the household budget? That was Sabrina's decision. I never asked. She brought it up herself one evening, matter of fact, like it was obvious, like it had always been the right answer, and she just needed a minute to get there. With two people actually working together, not one person carrying it and one person spending it, our financial picture grew faster than it ever had before. I think about that Tuesday night sometimes. My wife sitting across the kitchen table, leftovers between us, telling me with complete confidence that every woman needs an escape plan. And I smile every single time. Because her escape plan didn't lead to a lawyer's office. It led here, to a stronger marriage, a more equal partnership, a woman who knows what she's capable of because she proved it to herself, not to me. Stories like this don't always end this way. I know that. More often, these things calcify. People dig in, keep score, let the resentment build up quietly for years until there's nothing left worth saving. But every once in a while, a conflict turns into something else entirely. A chance. And if you're lucky enough, and smart enough, and stubborn enough in the right direction, you come out the other side of it with something better than what you had before. That's pretty much the whole story. My name is Kevin. My wife wanted an escape plan. Turns out the plan worked, just not the way either of us expected. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.